Trojan fans, welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, publisher from USCFootball.com, joined alongside my buddy and pal. We call him Triple Double. Connor Morrissette is in the house, wearing his Husker red, maybe. But no, we both got our 247 on. There's actually a Cardinal 247. I just have a lot of different colors of the 247 gear. But welcome, Connor. How you doing, man?
Doing well. How was your long weekend?
It was good. Hopefully everyone had a nice Memorial Day weekend. Of course, time to remember those that made the ultimate sacrifice for all of us and all of our freedoms, but it was cool. I was down at the beach a lot. Took Monday kind of off. I was a little under the weather, still a little under the weather, but I think I did a little too much maybe leading up to that. But how was yours? You had a good time?
Yeah, good time. Some buddies came into town and had a good time. It was a fun bachelor party for my buddy Mike, so really enjoyable.
Nice. I want to, like someone just said in the chat, we are live, by the way, we are live on YouTube and we're live on Facebook. And did I miss something? Jeff says, we got to talk about what Greg Sankey just dropped. Maybe that was yesterday. If it's yesterday, we're going to talk about that, Jeff. But if there's something new that happened, I haven't seen that. We were just doing an interview with junior safety Christian Pierce. So that should be up in a little bit. Thanks to House of Victory for doing that one. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. We are live, like I said, on YouTube and Facebook. The subject of today's show is going to be what I feel is going to be the barometer game for USC in 2025, USC versus Nebraska, who Connor's representing with his red shirt. No, but I know on the Peristyle, some people were thinking it was the Illinois game. We're going to get into all of that. Got to talk about the changing landscape of college football. And USC did get a reclassification, so a little help in the secondary out of Rancho Cucamonga. We'll talk about all that stuff in a little bit. If you have any questions or comments and you're watching us live, put them in the chat. It's great. I'll star them and get back to them later if you're on Facebook or YouTube. You can also email us, podcast@uscfootball.com, or call or text the same number, 424-254-9141. Leave us a voicemail, send us a text. We love that. If you have the Apple Podcasting app or Spotify, thanks for listening across any of the podcasting platforms. You can leave us a 5-star rating, which we love. And on Apple, you can do a review. I think they might start doing reviews on Spotify soon. I'm not sure. But wherever, if you can leave a review for us, we appreciate it. We love all that. I know you love the reviews, Connor.
Of course. It's mostly very nice reviews, so thank you.
Yeah, we had a couple. We had some feuding ones. There's a couple. I'm going to save it for the composite 2-star recruits. But people love to leave a review about Eddie's voicemails and stuff. So that's always kind of fun. It's also fun, especially long weekend, Memorial Day weekend. Hope you got over to Trader Joe's and bought some stuff. I did a little. It wasn't barbecue, but it was the rosemary steak tips, which I love a lot. They're pre-marinated. I know I've told you guys about these before, but they're great. You can do them like right on the stovetop, and 5-6 minutes, something like that, depending on how well you want them done. I bought the red potatoes, which I like, and I do the skin on red mashed potatoes, and just made a full-on salad from different, like lettuce and tomatoes and all that stuff. Sometimes I buy the bag salad, but I did some more of that. So I know I did that before, but I did it again because I like that meal quite a bit. And I get a lot of I like their yogurt. I'll make they have a granola yogurt, and then I'll just get bananas, and I kind of mix that together for breakfast and stuff. But yeah, I had a lot of Trader Joe's this weekend. I don't know if you got any, Connor.
Not this weekend, but as always, Trader Joe's near and dear to my heart. I'll be going there later today to pick some stuff up. I'm running a little late. The Monday holiday kind of threw me for a loop a little bit, so I haven't done my grocery shopping yet, but I'll be back at Trader Joe's, that's for sure.
Wow, you're in your 20s and still have a regular grocery shopping day. That's impressive. That's for old people like me.
Well, thank you. I'll take the compliment. I don't know how impressive that is, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice. Okay, so we're going to get into a bunch of stuff. Like I mentioned, we'll talk about the DJ Sermon's reclassification and get Connor's thought on that. We got to talk about the ever-changing landscape of college football. I know we touched on it last week. The Big Ten had their president, ADs, head coach meeting over at Terranea, not that far from here. So they had all the Big Ten peeps come out to Southern California. Smart move. But right now, the SEC meetings are going on down in Florida. And Greg Sankey dropped a few bombs. I know there's been some other ones today, so we'll talk about all that kind of stuff. But the topic I picked for today, and if you have ideas for topics of stuff, shoot us an email, podcast@uscfootball.com. Let us know. But the topic I kind of was kicking around was, all right, first of all, USC had 13-11 the last 2 seasons, 6-6 regular season last year. You need to be successful in 2025. Like, the fans really need a successful season. So the first thing I was like, well, what constitutes a successful season? And I think Connor and I are both on the same page of like a 9-3 would be successful. I don't think fans are going to get excited about a 2-game improvement to 8-4. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, not excited, but I do think that would still be a step in the right direction. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think I agree with that.
Yeah, so I think we're going to set the bar for success at 9-3. I think you're at least knocking on the door for the college football playoff, like potentially. It would be tough, I think, with the schedule USC has, because 9-3, you're probably losing to the best teams on your schedule, and then do you have any really good wins? Maybe you win some of those and you lose like a close one, like in the game I'm going to be talking about. We'll see, whatever. But you'll be in somewhat of the race for the Big Ten. And, down the road, it might be about, hey, trying to be in the top 4 of the Big Ten. 9-3 with like a loss to Notre Dame, meaning you're 7-2 in conference. You're potentially in the top 4 in the conference, which would get you into the playoffs probably in future years. We'll talk about that kind of stuff too. So we're going to go 9-3 as like, if that's successful, you'd like to do better. You don't want to do worse, especially after the last 2 seasons. So having said that, my idea was the barometer game, meaning like this is the one that's going to tell you if the season's going well or poorly, is the Nebraska game. November 1st, Lincoln, Nebraska. It's a road game for USC. I know some people in the chat were saying, hey, it's the Illinois game. So I'll kind of give you my reasonings why, get your thoughts on it, and get everyone in the chat. I know people are talking. It's like, yeah, there's like, there's different ways you can measure success. The record doesn't mean much if you like lose 3 1-point games or you get blown out by everybody. There's differences. And I preface this by saying too, like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's no barometer game if you're a team that goes and loses to Maryland. So like, if that kind of stuff is happening, then this doesn't really matter. This is assuming you're going to go out and like beat the teams you should beat. If you lose to Purdue next year, okay, the barometer doesn't matter. Like, it's not a good team. It would be, you're talking about 6-6 kind of record. But if you look at USC's schedule, and I kind of wrote down some of the notes here. So as far as the way too early top 25 polls go, USC would be playing Notre Dame and Oregon, that are top 10 teams, both of them on the road. Illinois is like in the 15-ish range. That's also a road game. And then Michigan, depending on, some people have them ranked like in the 20s or whatever, play them at home. So those are the 4 kind of like preseason, like ranked teams. If you look at the SP Plus, they did a post-spring version of that, and they actually have Michigan higher. But this is, it's not the end-all, be-all, but give you a feel for what's on the USC schedule. Notre Dame is coming in at number 6. Oregon is number 7. Michigan, number 10. Illinois, number 19. Then Iowa's down at 28. That's a home game. And then Nebraska at 34. USC overall is number 30, for just a reference there. No one else that USC plays is in the top 50. So all those other teams should be more beatable. We'll see about Iowa at home. Michigan, USC had a chance to beat them last year and all that kind of stuff. So, but 3 ranked road games. If you just look at those and say, okay, well, USC loses those 3 and then you win all the rest and you're 9-3. I think there'd be some sort of combination that, like, assume you lose on the road at Notre Dame and on the road at Oregon. And my write-up was go 2-1 against Michigan, which is a home, ranked team, and Illinois and Iowa. So go 2-1 against those 2 teams, or those 3 teams. And that would leave you with one kind of tough game outside of all that, being Nebraska. And to me, I felt like if you go on the road to Nebraska and get a win, I think that's a good chance of you being. If you beat Nebraska on the road, I think there's a really good chance of USC being 9-3. If you look at what happened last year, Nebraska came to the Coliseum. I got some photos if you're watching us live there. They had the throwback uniforms, but that was, if you remember, Jade Mayava's first start for the Trojans, and USC ended up winning that one 28-20. I know, talking to people from Nebraska, they felt like they let one get away. There was only 2 turnovers for Jade Mayava in the game, but it felt like there could have been more. A funny little fact from that game, Connor. I'll see if you can remember this. Jade Mayava threw the ball, and 4 different former Trojans now scored touchdowns on it. Do you remember why?
Well, Sierra Wright
initially
had the pick six.
Pick six, former USC DB gets the pick six.
And then did Deuce Robinson get a touchdown?
So the other touchdowns were to Deuce Robinson, Zachariah Branch, and Kyron Hudson.
All departed.
All not longer, yeah. Zachariah Branch, Kyron Hudson, and Deuce Robinson. So all those guys are gone. But anyway, I feel like Nebraska had a bad taste in their mouth. They were on like a 3 or 4 game losing streak. They were fighting for bowl eligibility like USC was. They have this young quarterback, Dylan Raiola, that they feel like can take the next steps. I think both programs feel like they've done things in the offseason to advance themselves and really get to that next tier. So that's why Nebraska is not preseason ranked. Same with USC, but both are trying to be there, trying to get there, to go from, we think they're going to be pretty good, to, I think they both have like a 7-5 over under for their programs. And then, okay, they could both take steps forward. I mean, I talked to some people and some national sports people that feel like Nebraska could potentially be like a playoff team. And if you're talking about USC being 9-3, I don't think Nebraska and USC could both be like 9-3. So to me, long thing there, I don't think Illinois is the barometer, because it's like a ranked team on the road that was good last year, bring your quarterback back and all that kind of stuff. To me, it's more about Nebraska, that I think you could lose. I don't know if you can lose to Nebraska and still be, I mean, obviously it's possible, but like it's much less likely, I think, to lose to Nebraska and have a successful season, where I could see you having a successful season that includes a loss to Illinois. That's my thought process and sort of the long diatribe there. But any thoughts? I have to catch my breath.
It's obviously hard to project it all out here at the end of May. I know one argument that's been thrown at you is it's hard to have that barometer game be November 1st, but it sounds like to you that doesn't really matter.
Oh, as far as timing goes, I would be looking at I'm not like going week by week. The teams are so different from week to week. If I look at the whole schedule, and again, if there's a loss to Purdue in there or Northwestern or whatever, like no, like the barometer is gone because you've lost to some teams that you shouldn't lose to. This is more about if you sort of play to your expectations. If you look at a thing as a whole, I think it's hard to look at the whole schedule and say Nebraska takes steps forward, USC takes steps forward, but one of those teams has to lose. And so going on the road is going to be a tough place to play. It's not a ranked team, at least right now. By the time USC plays them, they might be. Who knows? To me, it wasn't about the when it was. It was like, if you look back on the season, that win at Nebraska would be really big, and that's why they had success. Or, man, if they just could have beat Nebraska on the road, it would have been, they could have accomplished this or that or whatever. That's sort of my reasoning going into it.
And I know that a lot of people have said, I think Illinois is that game. And even though I'm wearing the red, that's sort of how I feel in the sense that Illinois, I think, is everything that USC should be from a preseason standpoint, where they have the quarterback coming back, they have the established coach, they have a lot of returning starters. Like Jade Mayava, he didn't start the year as a starter, but USC, in theory, has a lot of that especially on the defensive side of the ball. They have a lot of returning talent, and they have the somewhat established quarterback and the established coach. Like, that's the team who in the preseason, like you want to be like, and USC has historically been like, of course, the last couple of years it hasn't ended very well, but like they're the team with the expectations. And if you beat them, then all of a sudden those expectations kind of fall to you. So it is earlier in the year. That's the 5th game at Illinois. So there's still a hell of a lot that would happen after that. And I totally get what you're saying with the Nebraska game, Ryan. I just don't know if I buy that they're going to be all that great. Now, USC didn't win a single Big Ten road game outside of LA last season. So it's hard to just sit here and say, oh, they'll beat Nebraska for sure. But like I like Brett Bielema better than I like Matt Rule. I like Altmaier, the Illinois quarterback, better than I like Raiola. Like, I thought Raiola was very disappointing last season. And it's really hard to be a true freshman and come in and light it up.
Yeah.
But, like, there's a reason they lost those 4 games in a row in Big Ten play. Remember how bad UCLA made him look? He got sandwiched in that game, couldn't finish the game, I believe. He left for at least a couple snaps. Like, there wasn't a whole lot about that offense that got me to say, oh, watch out. Like, I think USC's defense is actually going to be better and take a decently big step forward. And I know Nebraska on offense, they're trying that, but like if you have a quarterback who just doesn't have it, how good can you possibly be? So that's sort of how I see it. I think Illinois is better than Nebraska, and it's understandable why they're getting all the preseason love and Nebraska's not. I think Nebraska has a chance to not be that good is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, but I think if you went to and the equivalent podcast from the Nebraska people and the things that are happening behind the scenes, like USC, oh, they got a new strength coach and year 2 of Danton Lynn. Well, they got Dana Holgerson to call plays, which they I think promoted in the middle of the year.
But is he like, oh, we got Dana Holgerson? Like, I mean, does that get people excited? It's Dana Holgerson.
He's a legit offensive
When was
mind.
the last time he did anything?
Okay, well, I mean.
Like Danton Lynn, like you get him, it's like, okay, I saw what he did at UCLA.
It was 1 year though.
Yeah, but I mean, it was damn good. And then what he did at USC last season, the win-loss record doesn't look good, but that defense was unquestionably way better than under Alex Grinch. And the Dana Holgerson thing last year, he was thrown in the middle of the year. Like,
right.
I don't know. It's just they're just kind of dysfunctional, like even more so than USC.
But I think they're fixing a lot of the NILs. I feel like I have a similar backstory, and then it could depend on. Okay, you got to go win on Saturdays. Like USC's done a lot of stuff in the last off seasons. Now the new whole personnel staff. Now they're recruiting well. Yeah, so I get that. I would say the early season stuff doesn't matter as much. Like, wouldn't you say like? If you picked USC to go 7-5 last year because you're overly optimistic. No, but everyone thought you were an idiot after USC beats LSU, right? And so if you look at the LSU game and you're like, okay, USC's going 9-3 at least if you beat LSU. But then you see you can't lose to Minnesota and Maryland and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not worried as much about when the game is. It's just kind of like. And this is only if you're playing up near expectations. If you play near your expectations, I think the teeter-tot game is going to be like Nebraska. Maybe, you could beat Illinois and maybe lose to Michigan at home, something like that.
I don't see the Michigan hype either. As I've looked more into these teams, like I get that USC, why they wouldn't be ranked after last season, and I know so many people have been burned by USC. I certainly was that last Caleb Williams year. I thought they were going to the playoff for sure. I thought we all thought that they were going to be awesome that year, and they just weren't. But like the more I learn about these opponents, like Oregon, preseason top 10 team, they of course have a lot of talent from the high school recruiting ranks that they've brought in, and they've added some impact transfers for sure. But like they need a lot to go right for them. Where I feel like Notre Dame, they're a team that I'm even more afraid of because they got the quarterback who's new, but like they return a lot of guys. Like I'm buying in on Notre Dame. I'm not necessarily sure Oregon is going to be as good as people think. And Iowa, I think that's a really good matchup for USC where their offense might be better, but their defense is taking a step back outside of their defensive line, which is going to be pretty good. So what I've said all along with USC, and this is something that, of course, most teams will need, but like for USC, I think it's even more important. Like as long as the offensive line isn't a train wreck, like where are the big holes on the roster? Like Maeva, he's shown he can win games. Yes, the turnovers are a problem, so that's something we need to look at. But like there aren't too many quarterbacks on USC's schedule who you take over him, in my opinion. So start there, and then the offensive line, that's couple question marks. But by all accounts, the running back room has been really good for USC, and that's a group I expect to have a lot of success. The receivers with Lane and Lemon, you're not going to find too many better duos than them outside of at Ohio State and Alabama. That's probably the third best duo in the country. And then defensively, they've revamped the defensive line. I like what they have at linebacker. Hopefully Gentry can stay healthy. The secondary, adding Chase and Johnson, I think that was a massive addition. Like, some of these teams have legitimate holes or have areas where, like, yes, we've addressed it in the portal, but like you just don't know. Whereas USC, I feel like you feel pretty good about the defense overall. Established quarterback, good running back room, receivers are two of the best in the country in Lemon and Lane. Like, the team is pretty good. And I don't know if you can say that about all these other teams. So as I've been going in and trying to do some research for my record prediction, like I find myself feeling pretty good about USC, and I am listening to some of these other people talk about these other teams, and they don't really scare me the way they did last season.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I think there's a lot of people in the chat that are optimistic. Our buddy, our resident Wisconsin fan, well, Matthew's actually a fan of a few other programs too, but he comes to our podcast with Champion one a lot. He says, in neutral respects USC, so much comes down to Maava to me. And yeah, I think you could say he's an established guy, but he's 3-1. But he could have easily been 1-3. Like, there's a lot of turnover worthy plays that can really take you out of games.
So much comes down to Lincoln Riley to me. Like,
yeah,
I thought he did a horrific job of managing Miller Moss last season. Now, was Moss as good as I thought he was? Heck no.
Yeah.
But I felt like if you had a coach who understood the limitations there, and to Gerard's point that he would always make, like, it feels like Riley is making a point to show, hey, I can win with this type of quarterback. Like, the play calling was so stubborn and was so repetitive in the middle of that losing streak last season, where if he evolves, like Maava, does he have his faults? Of course. He turns the ball over too much. He puts the ball in harm's way too much. You kind of have to be a psychologist with him, talk him off the ledge at times. I understand all of that. But if you're like a classic Big Ten team, it's a run-first team, and yes, you got two really good receivers, but like, stick to running the ball first and foremost. Try to get to, 3rd and 3. You don't have to hit the home run every time. Like, I think with Lincoln Riley, it's a lot harder to hit the home run in the Big Ten than it is in the Big 12 when he came from Oklahoma, and in the Pac-12 too. It was much easier. Like, I hope understands that now, and if he can change his play calling, like, is Maava this first-round NFL draft talent? I don't think so, but he's very, like, capable of winning games. The way the roster is set up, like, just don't have him throw the ball 60 times, and I think you have a real chance to have some success. So, to me, when I see that comment, like, it all depends on Maava. Yeah, I mean, of course, but is the coach going to do him any favors? Because I didn't think the coach did the quarterback too many favors last season in those games USC lost.
Yeah, I think when you look at USC last year, the defense got better, which is what you wanted. You just needed the offense to be similar, and it was way worse, right? So I think,
way worse.
Yeah, it was a lot worse. And there was a couple comments in there. Here's Jeff says, always comes down to the line of scrimmage. And I think you can't really tell on the offensive side, but I think the defensive side, the dudes that we've been able to see, it looks like a different species than what they had before. It's just like, these dudes are big, and it's I think that's going to be different. So, which is good. You think the defensive line is going to be a lot better?
I don't know about a lot better, but I just think, like, good enough to have a good season. Like, I don't think there's some 10.5 sack guy on the edge, but
right.
I think they're stronger and they can do a better job of stopping the run. Like, the real playmakers, who are the best players on the USC defense going into the season? It's Kamari Ramsey, it's Eric Gentry, it's guys not necessarily in that defensive line group, but I think overall the talent in the middle, like Keyshawn Silver is a solid nose tackle, and Jamal Jarrett has the potential to be a solid nose tackle, and you just have more bodies there. And on the edge, like, it would be nice if some of those guys pop. We just haven't seen it yet, but if the secondary does their job, the linebacking core does their job, you would hope that those edge rushers would be able to get in advantageous positions and get to the quarterback. And maybe they don't get the sack, but they affect the quarterback enough to screw up the play. Like, I don't envision this team being like one of those historically great USC defenses from a defensive front perspective, but I don't think they necessarily need to be that way. The defense is set up a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think they were fundamentally sound last year. They weren't the whole, like, looking at your wristband to figure out what's going on. They weren't doing any of that stuff, but they weren't making the big plays in the backfield either. So if you can still keep that those fundamentals down. They're just better at doing stuff in general, better on third downs, all that, but also mix in more quarterback hurries, mix in more sacks, because you got some better personnel on the defensive line. And I think the defense could be, significantly better potentially than last year. And the offense needs to get better too. So I think, like you mentioned, it's Riley. You're the quarterback guru. You've had this guy. He started the last 4 games for you. You've had the whole offseason to work with him. Raise that floor and keep the ceiling where it is. That's fine, but just raise the floor from what he can do. And that's your job as the head coach and the quarterback guy. You're the offensive guru. You didn't go out and get another quarterback, so I think you have enough confidence in the guy that you have. You got to make it work, and he's got to show significant improvement than what we saw last year, I think.
I agree, but I kind of think the Maeva conversation gets a little crazy where, yes, against Texas A&M, he looked awful for large stretches of that game, but they won the game. I don't feel like he gets the credit he deserves for that comeback. And I mean, I was guilty of saying that game was over. I hit a tweet off season starts now, when they were down by 17 in the second half. I thought they were done. So I want to make sure I give him credit for coming back. But
he did, yeah.
I mean, just going back to Nebraska, did Maeva ever look totally lost like Dylan Raiola did against UCLA? I do think his floor is higher than people give him credit for. It's just the turnovers. So, yes, obviously you can't be successful when you throw interceptions and you fumble the ball, but I think people got so bogged down by the negative that they forget the positive sometimes with him.
Yeah, Woody had a huge game against Nebraska last year. I think 145 yards or something like that. But there was 2 turnovers plus at least a couple more turnover-worthy plays. I think that's the one thing we were talking about, that Moss had some turnovers, but he kind of limited the turnover-worthy plays. I think PFF does something like that, and Maeva had more in that first game than Moss ever had all season. It was one of those things, and obviously it started off with a pick 6. You don't like that, but I think taking care of the football a little bit more is going to be something that you want to see, and not just the people I talked to that followed Nebraska, they were like, man, we should have 4 more turnovers. And there was a bunch of other plays that they could have potentially got the ball back. So you just got you got to limit those. You don't want to, Brett Favre, all-time interception leader in the NFL, I think he still is. You're going to have some of those, but it was kind of taking over some of the games where you can't really have that. And I think that's where you're hoping Lincoln Riley's going to fix some of that stuff in the offseason, because he's really good with the quarterback stuff.
Yeah, he is really good with the quarterback stuff historically. Hopefully he can get back on track with that, because I think we can all agree.
Yeah,
last season not quite up to that standard, of course.
But we didn't get much pushback in the chat about as far as barometer games go. And you could look at it. There's not some defined. I didn't look up barometer in Webster's or whatever, but it's just, for me, I think if I had to bet, and you look back at the 2025 season in December, is USC 9-3 or better? If they are, they beat Nebraska, and if they're not, they probably lost to Nebraska. That's just sort of the way, I don't know, I was looking at it. And I'm curious. We don't know. The off seasons it's just different to go from season to season, because the portal plays such a big part. Returning production doesn't mean as much as it used to, and those SP plus numbers, I think that a lot of that comes down to that. But some of it's almost like, hey, how many players could have left for the NFL that your boosters rallied and got to stay? Because the last 2 national champions both had that. Michigan had that in spades, and then Ohio State did too. You got Caleb Downs, and you were able to bring in some studs in the portal, but for the most part, it was keeping the guys they have. So keeping a Kamari Ramsey is a big deal. There's a lot of other factors that will make a team successful, and you never know, bringing in portal guys, does it work or not? Dorian Singer was someone you're like, oh, he was number 2 in the Pac-12 in receiving yards, and you're going to pair him with the Heisman Trophy winner, and that just did work. And other guys did. So it's hard to really tell, but there's some sort of hype around Nebraska. There, if you listen to like national college football podcasts, like Florida's getting a lot of hype, returning quarterback, and they had a really tough schedule last year and finished pretty strong. There's some hype around Nebraska too, so that's kind of why I picked them. Excuse me.
Maybe I just don't see it the way other people see it. I just don't trust that quarterback, and I have a hard time trusting that coach right now. I know going 6-6 for them last season was this huge, big deal, and that was significant. The fact that they broke that bowl drought, it was way worse before they went 6-6. They were always getting to 5 wins, then never getting bowl eligible, but like they still went 6-6 last season. That's not exactly some home run. They might see it that way, but that just goes to show how far that program has fallen.
And they limped to the finish because they needed that. Well, they started off with
5-2 again.
Yeah, and
then,
then
5-1, I think.
And then they kept losing games where they couldn't get bowl eligible. This is an interesting one. I'm bringing up from Matthew on the cover 3, and I noted that they talked about this too. Both Florida State and Georgia were really happy with their transfer wide receivers with Deuce Robinson and Zachariah Branch. And, we saw them, with Caleb Williams, with Miller Moss, and I think both had a lot of opportunities to sort of shine, and they really didn't. I think Deuce Robinson didn't play to his size, and Zachariah Branch was just really hard to get him open downfield. But it sounds like the reviews are positive. So that's interesting to me, Matthew, because, seeing those guys play, but, maybe different system, just different scenery. They're doing well. I'm curious to see how those guys do.
Well, Georgia, with all due respect, they sucked so bad at receiver last year. I think any receiver would look good. I have a hard time saying for sure Zachariah Branch is going to be this great player for them, but the Deuce Robinson loss, that's the one that I think is going to end up being more significant. But I did listen to that Cover 3 show, and the Georgia writer said that Branch was great. I read very closely a lot of the Georgia spring game coverage, and I think Branch had a couple catches. It's hard to have too many takeaways from spring games, but I don't know. That one would just surprise me if he came out and was this game wrecker for Georgia when he really didn't do much of that at all in his 2 years at USC. What was his best receiving game? Probably the Michigan loss. That's the one that I remember the most from him, where he had that one play down the sideline, and he was kind of a key outlet guy when the plays were breaking down for Miller Moss. So I'll believe it when I see it with Branch. Robinson, I believe a little bit more, but I think Georgia they needed to totally overhaul that position, and it seems like the competition is kind of wide open there. So maybe he does come in, and because it's so wide open, he takes over their number 1 receiver spot. But after what I saw last season, that would just be a big surprise to me.
Yeah, and Matthew points out that the Cover 3 is speaking as a positive for USC, that those guys weren't really doing much at USC, but they can do something at places like Florida State and Georgia.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's good, but like...
So it's like Lane and Lemon are so good that SC didn't mind letting them walk.
Yes. So, yes, that's good, but, I mean, couldn't they have helped you more last season then if they were so good?
That's... And, Jeff brought up that losing Branch in his punt return game.
What did he do there last year?
He wasn't very good. Yeah, like it almost was like it seemed mental to me where like you make that there's
so maybe a change of scenery will solve all those problems.
Yeah, like you make the decision to run up and field the punt or back off and catch it on a bounce or let it roll. And it just seemed like every time he made the decision, if he didn't go up and catch it, it rolled down to the 1. If you tried to go make a play, it was fumble or whatever. It seemed like it was always the wrong. It was like a bunch of coin flip decisions, and it was always the wrong one. It just never. And then after that happened early in the season, it just didn't seem to click. But like Mekhi Lemon came in and was great at that stuff. So yeah, I don't know. That was I think the potential for him to be great in special teams was certainly there. We saw some electric plays from him, but it just wasn't happening last year for whatever reason.
No, it was not. And I do think you miss his return ability from a depth perspective, because outside of Mekhi Lemon, I have no idea who else will be back there. Zacharias Williams from Utah, he did that in high school a little bit. I remember him watching him do that at Sarah Gardena, but
maybe Eli Sanders.
It's much different, at USC. But how often do you see running backs back there? I feel like you don't see running backs there a ton. They kind of feel like he's a little bit of a slot receiver, Sanders, so it could be him. We see DJ Jordan getting reps there in practice sometimes. It's going to be interesting to see what they do there because Mekhi Lemon is so valuable. I hope they keep him at kickoff return, but then maybe have someone else at punt return because of the injury risk. It'll be interesting. Maybe he does both, but he is so valuable that I would worry about leaving him out there for both jobs. So I think you miss Branch from a depth piece because he could help fill in, but he's only helping fill in. It wasn't like he was electrifying last season by any stretch.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Thanks for entertaining us with that discussion. RJ Sermons, Connor.
Yes.
So
he's competing in the state finals track meet this weekend. So it'll be a quick turnaround from him with track season ending and then reclassifying to get to USC. He was a 2026 corner, reclassified to 2025. He'll go right from track to USC. So that'll be a quick turnaround for him.
Rancho Cucamonga. I guess it hurts the 2026 class, right? Because he's not going to count for that anymore. But yeah, we just talked to Christian Pierce and same high school. We didn't ask him about it because he's still not on campus. So, but those guys are boys. But yeah, is this a big deal for USC getting a reclassification and some extra help in the secondary?
I don't know if it's a big deal for next season. I have a hard time believing that he's going to come in and play right away, but I think for the future of the team, it is a big deal. I do think some people on the Peristyle, they joke oh, it hurts our 2026 ranking. I don't care. I think some people do kind of care about that, which is a little frustrating. At the end of the day, you just want the players on your team. That's the most important part.
Yeah.
So the fact that this guy reclassified and is now on the team, even if he doesn't have a huge first season, that is really big. So I don't know how big of a role he'll have. Just looking at the depth chart, I have a hard time believing he'll be in front of DeCarlos Nicholson and Chasen Johnson and Marcellus Williams and Braylon Conley in that first year, but he does have that speed that the position maybe lacks a little bit. He's going to come in and be really quick. So is that his meal ticket? Can he come in and learn in one series of summer workouts to be in the rotation because he is so speedy? Maybe use him on third and long when a big play is coming to keep up with some of those fast outside receivers, maybe a little bit, but it is a really hard transition as we've seen. So I don't know for sure if he'll be a big piece in this first year, but just the fact that he's going to get in and get a year of lifting under his belt and a year with Danton Lynn, there's no reason that once DeCarlos Nicholson moves on, he could come in and fight for a job next season.
Yeah. But yeah, good, interesting move there. So we wanted to bring that up a little bit. And thanks for the information on that. The other thing I just want to talk about is the ever-changing landscape in college football. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, Big Ten meetings, presidents, ADs, coaches were at Terranea early last week. I'd mentioned a little bit on the show kind of what we had heard. And Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, I think there's two sort of perceived bad guys in this, Greg Sankey from the SEC and Tony Petitti, but Petitti's more behind the scenes. And I don't think he's hiding the fact that he's yeah, we want automatic qualifiers. I think he's a former TV executive. I think he just knows what is going to work best for the Big Ten, where Sankey came from, he's been in college for a long time, and he's the face of the bad guy. He's the main bad guy, but maybe Petitti's doing more stuff behind the scenes. I don't know. We'll see. But the meetings are going on right now in Florida. He spoke to the media yesterday, dropped a few bombs, got a little upset with the ACC and Big 12 commissioners because they both had statements about when they decided to reseed the playoffs 1 through 12 instead of automatic buys for the top 4 conference champions, that they were doing it for the quote good of the game, insinuating that the SEC and I think the Big Ten were doing things that weren't for the good of the game. Sankey did not like that and kind of went off, but it was interesting comments from him, and we're hearing some comments from the SEC coaches today. But just in general, it seems like I think everyone's still trying to take care of themselves. The conferences as a whole. Now there's programs in the conferences that want different things. But in general, the SEC and the Big Ten want the same stuff. it's gonna basically be beneficial for those two because they're the top two dogs. And right now they're really pushing for like a 4 automatic qualifiers in the newly expanded playoffs for 2026 and beyond, and more power for the top 2 conferences. And the Big 10, the Big 12 and the ACC, and the other, group of 6 or whatever they're calling it now, and even Notre Dame don't really want that. So there's some power struggles and stuff going on. I think at the end of the day, it's probably going to go the way that the SEC and the Big 10 want. Is that for the betterment of the sport? It's hard to say, but it seems like that's the way things are going now. But it's a lot of changes are happening. And decisions being made, and it's coming. We're talking about next year's season, right? Like 2026. Like we haven't even decided this stuff yet. Like they were talking about this stuff 3 years ago. They need to come up with this format, and they still haven't done it. But yeah, any thoughts on all that, Connor?
It just seems like they're pissed, the SEC, that they only got 3 teams in last year.
Yeah,
and those teams didn't have good showings at all. Tennessee got boat raced by Ohio State, and then Notre Dame had a fairly easy time with Georgia. That defense did a really nice job, Notre Dame's, to beat them 23-10, and then freaking Texas should have lost to Arizona State in that second round game, and they kind of had a gimme against Clemson because Clemson didn't deserve to get in, but they won that ACC championship game. So
right.
I hate that that's the reason why they feel like they deserve more. I feel like it's a bad example. They might be right. They probably do deserve to get more teams in a given year just because it is the dominant league. But like looking at last year and saying we had a couple teams beat Georgia and they got screwed to miss the playoff. Your league wasn't competitive in the playoff. Like I know you got to fight for your teams, and that's the whole job of the commissioner. But the fact that they're using last season as this galvanizing point to say, hey, we deserve more. It's like, no, you don't. Your team sucked last year in the college football playoff. They were not as competitive as you would expect the traditional SEC teams to be. Now, on a year-by-year basis, does that change? Absolutely. But, like, they deserved to get 3 last year. They got 3. In the future, I agree that if it expands to 16, let's give the SEC 4, let's give the Big 10 4. And then we were having this conversation off the air. I like to give the ACC 3 and then the Big 12 3, but then the Big 10 and the
that's a non-starter
SEC would be all like, oh, why do they get 3 and we get 4? If you don't finish in the top 4 of your league, I don't feel like you deserve to make this postseason tournament. But anyway, that just might be me. Like, why are we rewarding a 5th or 6th place finisher even in a hard league? I don't like the conversation from Sankey based on last year, but I understand why he's having it, because in a given year, most of the time, those 2 leagues probably should get 4 teams in each.
Yeah. Well, and Texas took, Arizona State went overtime with Texas. They should have beat them. That was crazy. We had a comment from Jeff. So Sankey announced that the SEC
No, that was fake news.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think that's, so it's not going to
that was
break
some
away. There was hints about it, like talking about like that's going to happen and stuff.
Well, I think he talked about it a little bit, like why do we need the NCAA? But I saw on Twitter someone reposted this fake CBS Sports report that said in 2028-29 they're breaking away. No, that is not
completely false. Okay,
that is a fake news thing. You gotta watch out for those.
Yeah. So someone had said at the beginning of the show like this Sankey announcement. I don't think it was any sort of announcement, but if you listen to his comments, it was kind of interesting. But what the SEC and the Big 10 want, I wouldn't mind 16 teams, whatever. The sport, everything's changing. Like we've only had 1 year of the playoff.
I do think you got to get rid of the conference championships. There's no point for those for the bigger leagues.
Well, that's the thing is like the SEC especially values their conference championship, but we've learned we saw that it didn't really mean much. It was better to not win your conference championship. Texas ended up winning. They lost the SEC championship. They win the game. And then Penn State loses in the conference championship, and they win a couple games, where Oregon and Georgia win, and then they lose after their bye. So I think they want to put value, at least the SEC for sure wants to put value on the conference championship game. So it's not just 16 teams and you do 16 versus 1 and all that. It's like a double bye thing. So you would be like 13 plays 16 and then 14 plays 15 in like the Army Navy weekend, and then what would be the first week of the playoffs would be kind of like what we just did in the 12-team playoff. So the byes at the top, and then all the other teams end up playing. So if you're, the number one seed, so last year was like Oregon, that first weekend, 13 through 16 is playing. The second weekend, it's all the people outside the top four, and then you don't play till the third weekend, like the double bye thing, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Whatever. I don't mind 16, but I'd rather just play it out like a regular deal. But some of the talk that's interesting that could maybe get rid of, and that's to reward if you win your conference championship. I think it's just for the top two would have a double bye, not all of them. But the interesting thing, and I think this is kind of cool, is okay, you're going to have 4 automatic qualifiers, but when you're talking about looking at just standings, there's a lot of teams that don't play each other. How do you do it? Having a weekend of play-in games, like maybe you have your top 2, and they don't even need to play for the championship. I know they want to have it, but instead of like a conference championship, you have play-ins.
I like that better.
I think that's cool. So then you have 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5, and then the 2 winners of those games are your 3rd and 4th representatives in the playoff. And I think that's pretty awesome. So I don't know if they'll do something like that, but I think it would be. I think that'd be cool.
I totally agree. Make it so a lower team has the chance to win and get in, and then you get a lot of eyeballs on those games. The fact that Oregon and Penn State had to play when both of them knew that they were getting in no matter what, like, it's great that Oregon can claim a Big Ten championship, but I kind of feel like get rid of those games. If you're the regular season champion, you're the regular season champion. That should be the main thing that these teams fight for outside of college football playoff qualification. The fact that game had, outside of seeding, no bearing on the postseason because both teams already were going to get in. It wasn't a scrimmage because it's still an opportunity for a trophy. But Oregon was the regular season champ. That to me should be valuable. It kind of comes back to like everyone gets a trophy, and it's a little bit different. But there's just too many trophy opportunities. Why if you're the regular season champ, let's keep it that way, and then you go into the college football playoff, and you'll probably have a really good seed because you were the regular season champ. With this format, it doesn't matter. Like, imagine in the NFL if
you weren't rewarded.
Exactly.
You weren't rewarded for winning, and I think that's what the double bye thing is supposed to do.
What if the AFC East winner played the AFC South winner? Both knew they were going to go into the playoffs no matter what, but they played each other to determine the seed of the playoff. Like, it doesn't make sense. The NFL teams would all say, let's get rid of that game and just wherever we lie, we lie. That's probably the biggest issue, I think, right now. Yes, I understand why everyone's frustrated about the college football playoff format, but, like, to me, if you can, the reseeding, that was a great move. I'm glad they did that. But if you want to just keep it at 12 and get rid of the conference championship games, the formats for those, I think that's a way bigger issue right now than the potential playoff.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm with you on that.
You weren't rewarded, and if you lost your conference championship game, you got to host a playoff game and win a playoff game, even though Texas kind of nearly screwed that up. But so it didn't go well for those, and I think they value that. I think the SEC values their SEC championship game more than most of anything, but having a playoff, having like the 3-4 positions be that important, I think they could potentially get rid of it and have those play-in games and make even more money, which is basically what this all comes down to. And so I think some of the SEC and the Big Ten definitely want 4 automatic qualifiers, and everyone else kind of doesn't. We talked about the Notre Dame game last week. What we've been told is like, hey, if they go to 4 automatic qualifiers and we can play Notre Dame without risk of, getting knocked out of the playoff, we're in. The SEC is kind of using that. They still play 8 conference games, even though they got 16 freaking teams. Hey, we'll go to 9. And then some of the coaches, I think that Elko might have said that today for Texas A&M. Like, yeah, we'll go to 9, but we just need those automatic qualifiers.
That seems to be the prevailing thought with everyone in the SEC. We'll go to 9, but give us the automatic qualifiers. And that's kind of like the USC Notre Dame thing. Give us the automatic qualifiers, and we'll keep playing Notre Dame. Although I don't know if that's 100%, whereas with the SEC, I think it is 100%.
Yeah, for sure. So that seems to be what's kind of going on there. So, we'll see. That's a big part of it. I think the transfer window as well. Kirby Smart
Yeah.
talked about that today a little bit, where maybe only one window and have it be in January. There's some people that would like it to be later, so it meshes with the academic calendar a little bit more. But where it is right now just doesn't make a lot of sense. So that was one of the other things that's kind of coming out of these meetings, and it matters what kind of the Big Ten and the SEC decide, because that's probably going to be what everyone else does.
What a mess.
It is a mess. The other mess, and it's funny, there was a good column. It was I think it was an SI guy who covers Indiana, wrote an interesting column on the House settlement, and there's a lot of weird stuff that's going on. Like July 1st is when, like, think about the seismic shift in what every one of us, however long you've followed college sports, we've only known players don't get paid. With all that's ever been. Like, it's never been anything else. The last 5 years or so, we've had this NIL stuff. But for a college, for the university, the athletic department to pay college players directly is I mean, you can't change much. Like, that's as big of a change as you're going to get. There's roster limits and all these different things. But the House settlement, we're talking billions of dollars moving. We're talking athletic departments having to budget now paying student athletes $20.5 million a year. This is supposed to happen in like 34 days, and it's not done yet. And like, you're supposed to go from like 0 to 100, and it's happening soon, and it's not even finalized, which it's kind of silly. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The columnist, I forget his name, I apologize if anyone read it, was like, this is on the schools themselves. A lot of schools have already budgeted for the House settlement to be implemented, have cut players from different sports teams because of the new roster limit. They've done all these things assuming the House settlement was going to go through. And it's a California federal judge, the 75-year-old woman who's making this decision, looked at everything, felt like it was good, like a preliminary, like, yeah, this looks all right, and then came back, heard from current student athletes that are part of, it's a class action lawsuit. So these are people that are in the lawsuit. They're, student athletes, and they're like, hey, I'm the 35th guy on the baseball team, and they're going to cut it to 34 or whatever it is. We're going to be out. I picked this school for this, for this reason, and now it's late in the process, and I can't go anywhere else. And I think the judge was sympathetic to that testimony from those players and said, here's a compromise, grandfather this in, so it'll go over time. So you cannot cut current players, even though some schools have already cut players, even in football. And apparently the schools came back, and their lawyers and everything, and they were like, well, we'll do it to the discretion of the school if they want to do that. So basically the federal judge said, here's what you need to do for this to clear. And the arrogance of all the schools were like, nah, we don't really want to do that. Well, now it's getting to be crunch time. Everyone thought this would get rubber stamped. It's not. Maybe it happens this week. It could have happened while we're talking, or am I just doing this diatribe? I have no idea. But it hasn't. And you're talking like a little over a month until this seismic shift in the whole sport where you're paying players directly from the athletic department. So that is a freaking mess. Like, that's not just something you turn a switch on and it happens. Like, that's a lot to be going on. So anyway, but I thought it was a good column. Go check it out. But any thoughts on all that?
I haven't read it, but I pulled it up here. The little subheading on the article, it says, the delay in the House settlement decision may be a bit much, but schools jumped the gun on implementing its changes before the deal was approved. And I agree with that, but I also understand why they did it. You can't just deals approved and then do everything the second it got approved. This required immense planning and very detailed projections and predictions and just models of what would happen. Like, I know why schools had to do it kind of early, because this is such a seismic change. But I don't know. It's just like everything with college sports. It's a mess. And until we end every show like this, but until collective bargaining happens and these players have a true voice at the table, a true seat at the table, this stuff is going to continue. So
We need a czar. We need a czar of college
that's
football.
funny. Greg Sankey was just asked about that, and he said a czar didn't work well for Russia, and a drug czar didn't solve anything in the 1980s.
I don't know, man. Pablo Escobar, he kind of, I guess Medellin. Do you ever watch any of those shows?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty good. Like, I guess Medellin's like blossoming right now. Like, I think he buried like tons of money like all around, so when he was gone, they could build more schools and hospitals and stuff. So I think Medellin's actually pretty good. But correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. So maybe his he did some horrible things, but I think he left Medellin in a decent spot. You like having your fiefdom, right? Like the SEC is its own little fiefdom. You can do whatever you want. The Big Ten is their own. But it would be good to have, as much as people don't like Roger Goodell, the NFL is the ultimate it's all about the shield. If you're, it doesn't matter how blue-bloody you are. If it's Jerry Jones or somebody that you're like, nope, that's not helping the NFL, we're going to shut that down. It's hard to shut down like Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State or somebody. If you're the Big Ten, you have to prop them up. I guess the good example is the Pac-12 didn't really prop up USC, and that's why Larry Scott is gone. But Greg Sankey would never do something that would like kneecap Georgia or LSU or Alabama. But if you have a commissioner and they were doing something really wrong, the commissioner's looking at the betterment of the entire sport. Like, yeah, Alabama's great, but we got to kneecap you for this because this is bad. Because we're looking at for college football as a whole and our big brands and all that stuff too. So I think, having an overall ruler or whatever you want to say, czar, I think it would be better for college sports.
I do too, but you do run into a whole group of issues. Like football then is even more separate from everyone else, and how much power does that czar have? Because if the czar has the power to rule on the legality of NIL deals, like, isn't that the same as Deloitte? You're able to get paid as much as you can get paid, and if a czar says that's not allowed, or if Deloitte says that's not allowed, I still feel like lawsuits are going to come, and it's going to get messy. Until these guys have a seat at the table, I don't know what the fix is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that was it from all my topics. Why don't we do this? We'll take a quick break. We got some questions. If you have any more, put them if you're watching live, put them in the chat, and we'll be back in a minute, everyone. All righty, we're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. Fun show today, talking about why I told everybody why I was right about Nebraska being the barometer, and everyone thought it was Illinois. Was completely wrong. I'm glad we've all agreed on that. Yes. Before we went to break, Jeff put in the chat, he said his exotic animal zoo also got loose, so now they have elephants in Colombia. So Pablo Escobar. If you watch the Narcos was a really good one on, I think it was Netflix. That was a really good show. I like that one. That was a fun one. We have one email from Mike in Oakland. He said, Ryan and team, RJ Sermon's just reclassified to enroll early. I was hoping you could explain why Riley would want him a year early. It seems, to a layman like myself, delaying enrollment to allow for more physical development would be more advantageous. Is this a maneuver by Bowman to bump the recruiting rankings? What am I missing here? Actually, would hurt the recruiting rankings, so I'm not sure.
No, it has nothing to do with the rankings. It's all
voted,
about getting the best possible players on your team. And RJ Sermons wanted to reclassify. This wasn't USC saying you need to do this. This was something his camp wanted to do, felt like they could pull off academically. And if you're USC, even if it's a year earlier than you were anticipating, he's a really, really talented kid. I think he's a top 100 player in 2026 at least. I don't know where he is in 2025. If he wants to come a year early, he's the kind of guy you let come on in a year early. The whole point of this is to get these guys on your team, and getting him on the team a year early might not be ideal, but he's still on your team, and that's the most important part of it, because what if USC has said no? Then maybe he goes somewhere else in 2026. Like, you have to make these players happy. This is an example of making the player happy and getting him on your team. I understand the development piece, but he'll probably end up redshirting anyway. I haven't heard anything about that, by the way, but like that's what I would guess, and that will give him that year of development, and then he's doing it in college, which would be better than doing it in high school.
Blessed Break says 80s cocaine just hit different. I'll take your word for it. Not haven't partaken in any decade, but I think the 80s, when you watch like Miami Vice and stuff, like when I was a kid, it looked like that was a big part of it. Eric on YouTube says, boys, not jinxing this, but what happens if we go 7-5 or God forbid 6-6 again? Does Hawkins go into full upside down? Wait, Hawkins?
I don't know what the second part of that means, but what if then Riley's gone, I think.
Yeah, I think even though he's got like $1 zillion left on his deal, I don't think you could like all the work that you did in the offseason, the last several off seasons, all the improvements that were made. If you go 6-6 again, and it's not like
schedule's easier.
Yeah, the schedule, like half the team got sick for the whole year, like everyone got pneumonia and they were all out or something. Anything short of that, you made way too many improvements to not do better on Saturdays. You have to do better on Saturdays. Like there's a huge push to just get everything better in the offseason, and I think they've done a really good job of that. But it only matters if you win football games. So if you're not winning football games, you fixed everything around Lincoln Riley. And if you don't win this year, then the thing you have to do is get rid of Lincoln Riley. So that would be a lot of pressure on the athletic department to come up with a ton of money, Jimbo Fisher type money, to get rid of your head coach. But I couldn't imagine them doing anything else. Like you can't do like the off-season campaigns and the excitement and everything if you're losing half your games. You're going 6-6. There's a bunch of games you shouldn't. We talked about Maryland last year. There's going to be a Purdue or some, Michigan State or something. You're like, oh my God, USC lost to this terrible team. Yes, probably would have a terrible road record again. All those things would be bad. You get a new strength coach. You do, personnel staff, defensive staff, new defensive line. Like every little problem you saw, not that they were all little. Every problem that you saw, you tried to address it. Now you got to win games. So.
It would be messy if they went 7-5 or 6-6 again. That's for sure.
Yeah. This is a recruiting question from Jamie. Is it true that Vance Stafford for Mission Viejo, for the podcasting people that can't read it, I'll read the question, Connor, before you answer. Vance Stafford from Mission Viejo, did he cancel his USC official visit?
It's Vance Spafford, and USC is no longer recruiting him, so that's done. I don't expect him to take an official visit. If he did, it would be a surprise. Never say never, but it sounds like USC parted ways with him. And that's interesting because USC was making this major push to get a bunch of guys who were either committed elsewhere or uncommitted to commit, and they didn't. And USC is saying now, we recruited you as hard as we can. This is the best we got. You still said no. We're going to go our separate ways.
We're going to move on. Yeah, I don't mind that.
Another interesting strategy where I think some schools will just play the long game and maybe a couple months you move off them, but like there's still a long way to go until December. I wonder if that's going to be a winning strategy too. We'll see.
Matthew says, if the POC Podcast of Champions ends, you and Dave need to do a crosstown podcast going of some sort. So Dave and I, we got to do something. It's just covering the whole Big Ten, 18 teams. I mean, are you watching Purdue, Illinois? Like we had to. Like that was not super fun. And it was a lot of work for like not really a lot of anything else. But I think we need to keep something going. It just can't be in the same format. We were doing 2 a week. It was a lot. So we'll figure something out. We just haven't figured it out yet. But I appreciate we had a lot of great listeners. We have a lot of great listeners to that. And Matthew came over from the Podcast of Champions to here, so I appreciate you doing that. This is unrelated. Eric, ask Connor why he only drinks water when he goes to Q's bar. Last Friday, in the flesh, he saw you, but all H2O.
I was there. That's funny. I was drinking Modelo's, though. Not.
Is he like Bagging on Modelo's?
Maybe.
He thought you only drank water.
I
You don't want to like shame anybody for like not drinking at a bar.
should have said hi. I suck at pool though, so that would have been embarrassing. But I was drinking Modelo, so maybe those look like water. I don't know. That's funny. Maybe he doesn't like light beer.
Maybe Modelo's not like. Well, they have a Modelo Light, I think, or some different version.
Oh, just a lighter,
yeah,
lightish beer. I guess it's not technically light beer. Well, thanks for seeing me. I guess, Eric. That's funny. I was there. That's hilarious.
Fight on SC. Why did we stop recruiting Lee and Spafford? Do we have a chance to get Arrington? So I think you addressed the why they stopped.
Yeah, same kind of deal. Lee, I maybe they liked other guys on their board, but I do think that they put the full court press on these guys, and it still wasn't enough. And it seems like the strategy is if that's not enough, we're going to go our separate ways. I do still think USC has a chance for Arrington, but I think he might be a better track athlete than football players. So I don't know about him. He seems like a 5-star kid who it's the speed that is why he's ranked so highly. He obviously is a good football player. I'm not trying to say he's a bad football player, but I don't know if his skill set right now translates into being that instant impact 5-star guy. If USC did end up missing out on him, personally, I wouldn't have that. That wouldn't be that big of a deal to me. So I still think they do have a chance, but if he goes elsewhere, I wouldn't really sweat it too much.
Blessed Break said Hawkins is a reference to Stranger Things, which I've not seen a single episode of. Have you?
No.
Yeah. So 2 different generations. You have. I'm a Gen X.
It is a popular show, though.
Yeah, but you hit 2 different generations, and neither of us have seen an episode. So sorry that one did not land. Blessed Breaks, love you, but that didn't work. Let's see. We got T Hack. Who will USC schedule for next year's non-conference game? Seems like they should have that schedule by now. Well, for 2025, they do.
For 2026, it's Fresno State, hopefully Notre Dame, but that's not official.
Right.
And I don't think they have another one outside of their Big Ten game. So if the Notre Dame game goes away, then they would need 3 more.
2 more, right?
2 more, non-conference games, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, because everything's changing, and I think that's part of the reason why, but I think you could certainly pencil in Notre Dame. Justin, this is on Facebook. Thanks for listening and watching on Facebook. This defense could be more exciting than the offense for the first 6 weeks, especially with the talent that is returning and coming in. Got a lot of space eaters in and going to try to make life easier for our linebackers to make plays in the run game. Hopefully, that helps out our young secondary. I think it's a great observation.
Yeah, I think that's what you have to hope for, because if the offense is really exciting, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I just think the defense is the better unit when you compare the two. The offense, while there are some returning starters at the receiver positions, at the quarterback spot, the offensive line looks different, running backs look different, tight ends, it's a little bit of a different group if Lake McCree isn't totally healthy. The defense, it just seems like they're ready to take this big step forward, and I definitely agree with that. But the level of competition in those first 5 games isn't great, so maybe the offense could do some things that they wouldn't necessarily do against better teams. But I buy into that, and I think it's good if the defense is more exciting, even if it's a Lincoln Riley coach team.
Yeah. Mike, also on Facebook, thank you for watching there. What's y'all's take on the chance we won't play Notre Dame year after next?
Well, we broke this down last week, but just the spark notes. Notre Dame wants a long-term contract to keep playing the game every year. USC offered a 1-year deal, kind of a go year-by-year situation with all the question marks in college football, which we both think is the right move. So Notre Dame is the reason why this rivalry is being held up right now. They could agree to a 1-year game tomorrow and it would go through. And what do I think is the chance? I think they will play in 2026, but I'll give it a 60% chance. 60% chance they do, 40% chance they don't.
Yeah, I'm more in the 85% chance
Okay.
they play. So I think they're going to play, but it looks like the automatic qualifier thing is going to happen, and the whole sport's going to be different. If USC and Notre Dame don't play, it'll be temporary, because that means that the Big Ten and the SEC aren't getting what they want right now, which means they will soon enough. And then once that happens, it'll be Super League or something like that, and Notre Dame will be included, and USC and Notre Dame will play. Like the current situation that USC's in, you can understand some of the reasoning why they didn't want to do this, but this current situation is like in flux and temporary. Like we're moving towards something different. I don't know if it'll ever stop evolving, but it's evolving. If they stop playing, it'll be in my opinion, a temporary. And I just thought about that right now. Like if they stop playing, this isn't the world we're going to be living in next year or the year from now. We had 1 year of the 12-team playoff, and it's already changed, and it's going to completely change in year 3. So it changes every year. Like if you were scheduling something to try to win a conference championship, like you're a Big 12 team and you were doing some schedule thing because, Arizona State ended up winning and they got a bye, we're going to really push to do that because we want to get a bye. Well, they changed the rules, and now it doesn't even matter if you could have won your conference, it wouldn't have mattered. So I think the rules of how this is going to happen are going to change so much that if USC and Notre Dame stop playing, it would only be temporary anyway, because there'll be some kind of Super League where they're all together, and then no reason they wouldn't want to play each other. My opinion.
I just think we don't know what we don't know, and if the game goes away for a year, then it goes away, and I don't know if they'd rush back to try to get it scheduled again. I hope I'm wrong on that, but I think if it goes away, you're in a real risk of losing it.
Yeah. And I think there's some pressure for Notre Dame to join a conference. That's what Jeff pointed out. I think the Big Ten would love that. The automatic qualifiers wouldn't be great for Notre Dame if there's only like 3 open spots that they could get into, where if all these other conferences have a whole bunch. So yeah, I don't know. The current playoff is great, I think, for Notre Dame. The newly proposed ones from the Big Ten, the SEC it's still good for them, but not as good as it would be now. So especially because they could get into that number 5 spot. Now they can get into the top 4 if they're one of the top 4 teams. But before they couldn't get that bye. But we looked at it and you're like, you're almost better being the 5th seed and getting a home game. And they got to play Indiana in the first ever home game. I mean, that was pretty darn cool, And obviously those teams with byes got trucked or whatever. Like they didn't win. So where Notre Dame was better, I think, than Penn State had probably the best. They lost the Big Ten championship game and they had the easiest road. And yeah. A couple more, we'll let you guys go from Blessum Breaks. Regarding a buyout for Lincoln, I'm pretty sure that we would get back money if Lincoln then signed a contract to coach another team. You can't double dip on contracts. 100% Matt. 100% sure Matt Rule isn't. And yeah, I don't know if anyone's going to be paying him $11 million. Yeah, so I think there's creative things you could do about it. Like it probably wouldn't be a Jimbo thing. I think someone would still want to hire Lincoln Riley, but I don't know, is he Cliff Kingsbury like NFL coordinator, or is he going to? I don't know. I'm not sure what his path would be, but yeah, you could offset some of that, but it's still going to be a lot of money that's coming out of your pocket that the athletic department would have to kind of raise and figure out what to do. But if you're talking about a 6-6 season, then it's like it's a necessity, Maybe they would want to, like if you went 8-4, but I don't think it would be a necessity, and it would be a much harder ask. But if you're losing 6 games again, I don't think there's a question that they have to figure something out because it's just not working. And then the last one, we've got Victor. Do you guys have an idea of who the wide receiver 3 would be this coming season? Any thoughts?
Seems like it's either going to be Prince Strawn, DJ Jordan, or Zacharias Williams would be my guess. I guess maybe Jay Fair has a chance too, but he's been all banged up all spring, or he was, so I don't know how big of a jump he's made. But I'd probably lean Strawn because he has been here the longest out of the transfers between him and Williams, and he's just more established than a DJ Jordan. And Jay Fair, I don't really know what's going on with him. He kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, so maybe he'll bounce back, but I'm not too confident about that right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Strawn his story is great. He's a big dude. Looks a little different than, some of the other receivers out there, like a different kind. It's not like Jacoby Lane. It's a little different. But I kind of think he's going to be your wide receiver number 3. That's my guess. But we'll see.
But it's wide open. Could be anyone.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap things up. Good stuff. It was a fun show. Let us know. Do you have any other topics like that? If you enjoyed us talking about, why I thought the Nebraska game was the barometer for USC's 2025 season. You think I'm right, wrong, whatever. Any other ideas like that we can dive into, because we have an off season. We get a lot of stuff. It's fun to do the player interviews, which we'll keep bringing you. And I think we have a very special guest coming up next week we're working on. So I think you will enjoy that outside of the player world, but someone, integral part of USC football. So we'll see, hopefully get that done. But yeah, anything else, Connor, before we go?
No, I keep thinking that we don't have much to talk about, and then we keep doing these long shows. So it's great that even though it's the off season, there's always something we can discuss.
There is always something. But we appreciate everyone tuning in live on Facebook and YouTube or wherever you listen across the different podcasting platforms. For Connor Morrissette, I am Ryan Abraham, and really hope you enjoyed the show. And of course, we will talk to you next time.